They laughed at the black kid in camouflage until a Black Hawk landed on the football field. Every morning, Malik Carter suited up like a soldier, not for battlefields in Afghanistan or Iraq, but for the war zone that was Lincoln High School. His uniform wasn't government-issued. It was something far more sacred, a hand-me-down camouflage jacket, worn and faded, with sleeves rolled up and patches stitched carefully by hands that had seen real combat. His boots, too, 2 sizes too big, thudded against the linoleum like distant mortar shells. Most kids would have stumbled, but not Malik. He wore every step like armor. The moment he pushed open those heavy school doors, the barrage began. Yo, it's G.I. Joke. Is that kid doing ROTC cosplay or what? Laughter ricocheted off the lockers. Snickers slipped through AirPods, and smirks sharpened the edges of every hallway stare. They laughed because they didn't know, because it was easier to mock than to understand. Malik walked on, past Tyson, past Blake, Alicia, Jackson, all of them holding up their iPhones like weapons, recording him for the next viral meme. They saw camouflage, but they never saw the grief beneath it. They saw boots, but never the weight he carried. Every day, his mother's voice rang in his ears like gospel. Ignore them, baby. You're walking with purpose. And every day, Malik nodded. But lately, it was getting harder. Harder to stay quiet. Harder to believe. Because while the world laughed, Malik carried a wound no one could see. One that never bled but never stopped aching. His father, Sergeant First Class Elijah Carter, was missing in action. At home, the silence hit different. His mother, Tanya, tried to stay strong, but Malik could see through it. The fake smiles she put on like makeup. The way her eyes darted to the window every time a car slowed outside. The stack of unopened boxes from the army, still sealed like they might explode with the truth. One night, he heard her whispering into the phone. Her voice cracked like glass under pressure. They said he's presumed dead, but I don't feel it. Not in my bones. Not in my heart. Malik didn't breathe. He just sat in the dark, jacket clutched against his chest, the scent of sand and sweat still lingering in the fabric like a ghost. You're not dead, Dad, he whispered. I know it. I know it. The next morning, he wore the jacket tighter, shoulders squared, chin high. Every thread felt like a vow, but that only made the laughter louder, the memes crueler, the whispers sharper. They didn't know what that jacket meant. Didn't know that Sergeant Elijah Carter had last been seen boarding a Black Hawk helicopter during an extraction mission in Kabul, a mission that went dark and never came back. The media covered it once, a footnote on a 24-hour news cycle. But to Malik, it was everything. He remembered that last morning, the quiet hug, the worn, calloused hand on his shoulder, the whisper in his ear that burned hotter than any goodbye. Be brave, soldier. Hold the line for me. Malik had tried. God knows he had. But holding the line meant standing alone. His grades slipped like loose rounds in a rifle chamber. Teachers started calling home. Tanya defended him, but even she began to worry. Malik wasn't lashing out. He was fading, pulling in. He stopped speaking in class, but his hands were always moving, sketching helicopters in the margins of his math homework, coding flight simulators in secret, watching archived military ops on YouTube, reading classified debriefs that had somehow leaked online. He joined the tech club, not for friendship, but for access, to learn how drones worked, how encrypted signals could be traced, how lost birds could still return home. While others scrolled TikTok in bed, Malik sat with his headphones on, listening to military scanners, fingers trembling on the dial. Every crackle of static became a prayer. Every garbled voice, a chance. Carter, move, covering South Ridge. His heart would jolt. He'd sit up straight. Dad, silence. But he never gave up. Because somewhere, deep down, Malik believed one thing with all his might. His father wasn't dead. He was just waiting to be found. But it gave him hope. Hope sharper than logic. Stronger than grief. The kind that doesn't whisper, it drives. Malik began collecting data like a man obsessed. Black Hawk flight paths, radio logs, ghost mission entries, base codes long since scrubbed from public record. Most of it was redacted, entire pages blacked out like secrets buried in war. But that didn't stop him. He wasn't just searching anymore. He was mapping, plotting, building a theory with the precision of a strategist. What if he's not dead? He asked his reflection in the cracked mirror above the sink. What if no one's looking in the right place? No one answered, but Malik kept building. He was no longer just hoping. He was preparing. Tucked in the far corner of the school library, Malik sat hunched over a glowing tablet. Shadows danced across his face. The firewall meant to block suspicious sites never stood a chance against his code workarounds. On the screen, a 3D model of a UH-60L Black Hawk rotated slowly. 4-man crew, internal refueling system, max speed 183 miles per hour, he murmured. Every rivet, every rotor. He knew it all. He devoured hours of footage, takeoffs in dust storms, night ops under full blackout, chopper extractions under fire. What started as mourning had turned into mastery. Obsessive. Maybe. Reckless. Possibly. But it gave his grief shape. Direction. Mrs. Alvarez, the school librarian, passed by with a stack of books. She paused, concern etched in her brow. You okay, Malik? He looked up, hiding the diagram with a swipe. Yeah, just doing a project on flight mechanics. Not a lie. Not the whole truth. That night, home was quiet as ever. Tanya worked double shifts, nurse by day, Uber driver by night. Malik reheated old spaghetti and sat across from the corkboard that had swallowed half his bedroom wall. Red threads ran like blood vessels. Satellite images pinned with care. Coordinates scrawled in Sharpie. In the center, a photo of Sergeant Elijah Carter, beaming in uniform. Beside it, Malik pinned a new note. Possible crash site, valley north of Wardak. He had triangulated the final transmission using radio chatter from archived military channels and cross-referenced it with public flight manifests. But something didn't add up. The Army's official story said fog caused signal loss. Equipment failure. Mission aborted. Malik didn't believe that. Not for a second. So he went deeper. He began posting anonymously on classified military forums, using the alias Flight Echo 42. He asked careful questions about unlocked flights and ghost landings, missions that were never meant to be recorded. For a long time, silence. Then one reply appeared, chilling in its simplicity. There are birds we don't talk about, kid. If it went black, it was meant to disappear. Malik stared at that reply for hours. Disappear? Not if he could help it. The next day, the school announced Career Day. Students were encouraged to invite a parent or guardian to talk about their profession. Malik was barely listening in the auditorium when Blake snorted behind him. Perfect, he muttered. Malik gonna bring his imaginary daddy in that knockoff camo. Laughter. Loud. Cruel. Malik didn't flinch. Didn't cry. Didn't even blink. He just stared at them. And in that stillness, something clicked. Career Day wasn't just a school event. It was a platform. A stage. A moment where eyes had to watch. What if he used it? That night, he powered up his laptop. His fingers hovered above the keys, shaking. Then he began typing an email. Subject: request to arrange surprise visit. Urgent. He poured everything into it. His father's MIA status. The years of silence. The bullying. The evidence he'd collected. The coordinates. The photos. The decoded signals. The trauma, yes, but also the hope. He ended with one last plea. If you can't find him, at least let me honor him. Give me 1 minute of airtime. Just one. He hit send. And waited. Days dragged by. No reply. Just static. He refreshed his inbox every 15 minutes. At night, he dreamed of radio fuzz and spinning rotors, of wind kicking up sand, of a silhouette waving just beyond reach, swallowed by dust. Then, one morning, Tanya knocked on his door. Her voice was tight, like she didn't trust it. Mail came, she said, from the Army. Malik froze. A single envelope. Thick. Government stamped. No return address. Inside, a letter and a photo. But not just any photo. Elijah Carter, standing in front of a group of Afghan villagers, smiling. Alive. Or at least he had been after the date of the mission's disappearance. The letter was short. Cold but not empty. Private communication. Do not share. Investigation reopened. Further contact soon. Lieutenant Colonel D. Sutherland. Malik read those words over and over again. Reopened. Just one word, but it hit like thunder. Somewhere out there, someone had listened. Somewhere out there, someone had believed. He blinked at the word until it blurred. Reopened. He read it over and over again, each time as if the letters might vanish if he stopped looking. That word held weight, fire, gravity. Later that day in science class, just as the teacher began a lecture on chemical reactions, Malik's phone buzzed quietly on the desk beside his notebook. Unknown number. We received your coordinates. Situation being evaluated. Keep this quiet. His heart thudded like a rotor spinning up. His fingers clenched around the edge of the desk. Something was happening. Not maybe. Not someday. Now. That night, Malik didn't sleep. Instead, he worked, constructing a full 3D terrain simulation of the Wardak Valley, the possible crash site he had pinpointed. He rendered the slope gradients, possible helicopter approach vectors, known military-friendly zones, and potential escape routes. It wasn't homework. It wasn't fantasy. It was strategy. He sent the simulation back to the same anonymous contact, attaching every frame with meticulous care. 3 hours later. Impressive. We're listening. No promises. But it wasn't silence. At school, something in Malik shifted. Not out of pride, but purpose. A quiet certainty replaced the hesitation that had lived in his chest for too long. When Blake stuck his foot out in the hallway, expecting Malik to trip like always, Malik stopped mid-stride, looked down, then met Blake's eyes. His voice was low. Come. I know who I am. And that was all. Even the teachers started to notice. Principal Landers caught him in the hallway. Malik, you're different lately. Malik only nodded. He didn't need to explain anymore. The night before career day, Malik stood folding his father's camouflage jacket on his bed, each crease perfect. Tanya sat beside him, watching in silence. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said softly, your father would be proud. Malik looked up, tears threading into his voice. What if he's still out there? Tanya didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence between them was full of hope. Then came career day. Lincoln High buzzed with activity. Parents in crisp suits and military uniforms gathered in the gymnasium. Rows of folding chairs filled with students fidgeting beside their name-tag guardians. Banners hung across the walls. Futures begin here, and leaders of tomorrow. Malik Carter sat alone, quiet, perched on the edge of the top bleacher. Watching, waiting. Blake strutted by in a starched shirt, his father, an accountant, shaking hands and flashing business cards. He spotted Malik and smirked. Didn't think you'd show your face today, soldier boy. Malik said nothing. His eyes stayed on the sky. At 1:43 p.m., his phone buzzed in his lap. Final clearance received. Stand by. His breath caught. He stood slowly, walked down the bleachers, and approached the podium, where Principal Landers was introducing a local firefighter. I'd like to speak, Malik said quietly. The principal looked at him, startled. Oh, your mother said she couldn't make it. She didn't, Malik said. But someone else is coming. Principal Landers paused. Nervous. You've got 2 minutes. Malik stepped up to the mic. His palms were sweating, but his voice didn't shake. I know most of you laugh when you see me in this jacket, he began. The room hushed. Phones dipped. Teachers turned. And that's fine. You don't know my story. You don't know why I wear it. But I wear this not as a joke, not as a costume. I wear it as a promise. A current of whispers rolled through the gym. My father disappeared while serving this country. They said he was gone, but I didn't believe it. I couldn't. So I looked. I mapped. I studied. I searched. He paused, letting the silence land like weight. Today isn't just about careers. It's about truth, about legacy, about the people who fight, not just on battlefields, but in silence. Every day. He stepped away from the mic. Principal Landers approached, pale. Malik, what did you do? Just then, the school's PA system crackled to life. Attention staff and students. Please proceed to the football field immediately. Confused murmurs spread. Teachers looked at each other, unsure. Students stood, collecting their things. Outside, the sky stretched wide and blue. And then the sound came. Faint at first. A low, distant thrum. Growing louder. Deeper. Rotors. Malik stood still. The thrum became a roar. Students ran to the windows. Teachers dropped their clipboards. Phones flashed up like lighters at a concert. A black shadow streaked across the sun. It wasn't just any aircraft. It was a Black Hawk helicopter. Gasps erupted across the crowd as it descended over the football field. Sleek, controlled, military sharp. Wind tore through the bleachers. Hair flew. Papers scattered like leaves in a storm. The aircraft touched down on the field with soldier-like precision. Dust swirled. Flags rippled. Every eye was locked on the center of the grass. The side door opened. A man stepped out. Uniformed. Strong. His walk steady. His face, aged by time, marked by survival, but unmistakable. Sergeant First Class Elijah Carter. Alive. Whole. Real. Tears streamed down Tanya's face as she stood at the edge of the field, hands covering her mouth. Her knees buckled, but someone caught her. Malik didn't move at first. He couldn't. His brain refused to process what his eyes saw. Then he took one step, and another, and then he ran. The crowd parted. All eyes followed the silence, but for Malik and his father, the world had narrowed to a single moment. No one laughed. No one whispered. No one dared interrupt what was unfolding in front of them. Father and son locked eyes. Years of hope, hurt, and hunger exchanged in a glance that said everything words never could. And then Malik ran. He ran faster than he ever had in his life. His boots thundered across the turf, too big as always, but now carrying him toward something that finally fit, toward someone who had never left him in spirit. Elijah dropped his gear and opened his arms just in time. Malik slammed into him, a collision of grief and joy and bone-deep love, and wrapped his arms around his father like he was anchoring the world back in place. The thunder of the Black Hawk's blades couldn't drown out the sound of the sobs, his mother's, even some of the teachers, and gasps from the sidelines. People cried openly, and the camera crews, tipped off by some anonymous hand, captured it all in real time. Mr. Landers, the principal, stood in place, hand on his chest, whispering almost involuntarily, "My God." And just like that, Malik Carter was no longer a joke, no longer a meme, no longer a walking target. He was something else entirely. He was a symbol of resilience, of loyalty, of never giving up. The field stood still, wind tossing the flags gently, as the helicopter's blades slowed into silence. What remained was awe. Elijah pulled back just enough to look at his son. His eyes were older, deeper, but proud. "You held the line," he said. His voice was hoarse but certain. Malik nodded through the tears that refused to stop. "You came back." "I never stopped trying." Behind them, 3 officers stepped down from the aircraft. One of them cradled a silver military case. Malik immediately noticed the insignia. It wasn't just standard army. These were Department of Defense operatives. Principal Landers cautiously stepped forward, still visibly stunned. "Sergeant Carter, this is completely unprecedented." The lead officer addressed him calmly. "Principal Landers, this entire event has been cleared through both the Department of Defense and the Office of Veteran Affairs." He handed the principal an official folder with federal insignia. Landers opened it, eyes scanning the document slowly. His lips moved without sound. Meanwhile, Malik turned to face the students. Blake, Alicia, Jackson, the same kids who once couldn't go a day without a jab, stood frozen in place, their faces slack with disbelief. "This isn't about making a scene," Malik said. His voice was steady now, loud enough to echo through the stadium speakers. "This is about truth. For 3 years, I was told my father was dead, but I didn't accept it. I searched. I built maps. I tracked flight patterns. I analyzed chatter. I made them listen." One of the officers stepped forward. "It was Malik's persistence that brought us here. His triangulation was correct. His intel forced us to reopen the case. Frankly, his work was advanced enough to earn attention for military analysts. He is the reason we found Sergeant Carter." Gasps. Audible gasps. Malik turned back to the crowd, students, faculty, staff. His voice carried not just weight, but clarity. So next time you laugh at someone for what they wear, or what they believe in, ask yourself, what would you do if the world told you your hero was dead, but your heart told you otherwise? No one answered, not even Blake. He looked away, swallowing the pride that had once fed every cruel word. The school released students early that day, but no one rushed to leave. They stood in clusters, whispering, glancing toward Malik with something they'd never felt before, respect. Malik walked back toward the school, flanked by his father and the officers. He walked differently now, not just with dignity, but with history, with legacy, with truth on his back like the jacket he wore. Inside the building, every step echoed louder than before. Teachers went silent when he passed. Students moved aside, not out of fear, but reverence. Blake stood by his locker, the same place where the ridicule used to begin. Now, for the first time, he looked like he had nothing to say. Malik walked right up to him. His tone was calm, measured, direct. You ever ask yourself why you needed to laugh at someone like me? Blake opened his mouth, then closed it. He blinked. I didn't know, he muttered. I didn't think. No, Malik said. You didn't. Blake swallowed. Hard. For once, he didn't have a punchline. No smirk. No comeback. Around them, the hallway had gone still. Students watching. Teachers holding their breath. Malik didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence said everything. That evening, Principal Landers announced an all-school assembly for the following morning. But this time, Malik wasn't just invited. He was the keynote speaker. Not out of sympathy, not even out of apology, but because of leadership. When Malik stepped onto the stage the next day, the gymnasium was packed. Students sat upright. Teachers stood. Even the janitor leaned against the back wall, arms crossed in attention. Malik took the mic with ease. I came to this school as the son of a ghost, he began. Or at least, that's how people saw it. And I let them believe I was a shadow too. He held up the camouflage jacket. It looked different in his hands now. Less like armor, more like a banner. But I was always more than the uniform. We all are. He paused, scanning the room. This jacket, it's not a costume. It's a legacy. One that taught me how to survive every joke, every whisper, every name they threw at me. Because some of us are forged in silence, in hope, in the fight you don't see. And in that moment, every person in the room saw Malik Carter not as the boy in camouflage, but as the young man who changed everything. And now, I'm not just surviving, I'm leading. Malik's voice echoed through the gym like a thunderclap wrapped in stillness. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was sacred. Students sat breathless. Teachers, usually too busy or tired to be moved by anything outside lesson plans, felt tears press at the edges of their eyes. Even Principal Landers stood with his hands folded, as though bearing witness to something holy. That afternoon, Lincoln High wasn't just a school. It was a witness stand, a cathedral, a battlefield, and Malik had just emerged from it a hero. The ripple effect of that moment reached far beyond the school walls. News vans lined the sidewalk the next morning. Satellite dishes spun toward the heavens. Headlines exploded across the nation. Teen tracks down missing father using military mapping skills. Social media lit up with hashtags. Hashtag camouflage kid. Hashtag legacy in flight. Hashtag real heroes wear silence. Malik's inbox flooded with internship offers from military tech firms, invitations to speak at veteran conferences, letters from generals and retired service members who saw in him the same spark that had once led them to serve. Yet despite the sudden flood of praise and fame, Malik remained grounded because he hadn't done any of it for applause. He had done it for truth, for his father, for everyone who'd ever been laughed at, for simply believing in something more. But perhaps the most profound change wasn't on the news. It was in the hallways of Lincoln High. Blake, the same boy who once called Malik G.I. Joke, approached him one morning, not with a smirk, but with shaking hands and eyes that couldn't quite meet his. I was wrong, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I was cruel. And I don't expect forgiveness. Malik looked at him for a long time, not with anger, Not even pity. Just quiet reflection. It's not about what you expect, he said softly. It's about what you do next. That sentence would linger with Blake for years. Ashley, the girl who once filmed Malik in Camouflage and turned it into a viral meme, deleted the video on her own. No one pressured her. No one demanded it. She did it because she had changed. In its place, she posted a public apology, raw, unfiltered, and began using her platform to highlight stories of military children, addressing cyberbullying and the invisible struggles kids carry in silence. Principal Landers, moved by what he had witnessed, initiated a sweeping review of the school's culture. With Tanya and Elijah Carter's help, he launched a new initiative, Legacy Voices, a district-wide program to amplify the stories of students from military and marginalized families. Malik was asked to help design the curriculum, not just as a participant, but as a leader, and he stepped into that role with the same quiet strength that had brought his father home. His first act as program director was to curate a school-wide exhibit titled Camouflage Doesn't Mean Invisible. It filled the gymnasium. Photos of families separated by deployment, handwritten letters between siblings and soldiers, timelines of service, maps drawn by children too young to understand what war really meant. Malik's section stood at the heart of it all. His original 3D simulation of the Wardak Valley, the flight coordinates, the emails he sent to military contacts. It wasn't about showing off. It was about showing the cost of silence and the power of never giving up. Students walked through the exhibit with wide eyes and quiet hearts. For the first time, they didn't just see Malik as the boy in the jacket. They saw a story stitched into every seam. They saw themselves, in some small way, in his resilience. Lincoln High was changing, and at the epicenter of that transformation stood the boy who once sat alone at lunch. 1 year later, the football field, the same place where the Black Hawk had descended from the sky, held a new bronze plaque mounted near the bleachers. It read, "In honor of those who walk silently with courage, like Malik Carter." The dedication ceremony was packed. Students, parents, veterans, educators, even local government officials, all gathered beneath the clear blue sky. Elijah Carter, now fully reinstated and spearheading veterans' outreach for the state, stood with his hand on his son's shoulder. "I've led men into combat zones," he told the crowd, voice full of conviction. "I've faced enemy fire and impossible odds. But the bravest thing I've ever seen was a young man walk into school every day knowing he'd be laughed at, and showing up anyway." He turned to Malik, pride written in every line of his weathered face. "Son, you didn't just wear my jacket. You honored it." Malik smiled, his eyes scanning the audience. Blake and Ashley sat near the front, not as enemies, not even as friends yet, but as people who had changed. People Malik had helped awaken. That fall, West Point sent Malik an acceptance letter. Full scholarship, a rare honor. But before he packed his bags, before he stepped into the next chapter of his life, he gave one final speech in Lincoln High's auditorium. This time, as a graduate. No lights, no teleprompter. Just Malik, his father's jacket folded neatly in his hands, standing under a single spotlight. "We don't get to choose the battles life gives us," he began. "But we do choose how we fight them. Some fight with fists. Some fight with fury. But the ones who last, they fight with purpose." His voice grew stronger with every word, yet never lost its calm. "I wore this jacket not to pretend I was strong. I wore it to remind myself what strength really looks like. My father didn't scream. He didn't boast. He endured. And sometimes endurance is the loudest roar of all." He paused. The silence was thunderous. "Sometimes the world will tell you your heroes are gone. That hope is foolish. That faith is a waste. But if your heart still hears a signal, follow it. Even if no one believes you. Even if you're alone." He raised the jacket. Because real heroes don't always come home with fireworks and medals. Sometimes they come back quietly, when no one thinks they will. The entire auditorium stood, not because they were told to, but because they had witnessed something rare. A story not of tragedy, but of transformation. They clapped not just for Malik Carter, the boy who brought his father home. They clapped for every child who's ever waited in silence, for every whisper that ever carried the weight of a roar, For every soul that's ever worn camouflage, not to disappear, but to remember where they came from. And as Malik walked off that stage, jacket slung over his shoulder, one truth remained. Sometimes the loudest heroes are the ones who never needed to raise their voice.